Welcome back to the Acro Lab. My name's Tim and this is episode 7. Today we're going to do a new segment on the Coral Lab. We're going to do a deep dive into my personal favourite species group within the Acropora corals, the Humilis species group. And so this is going to be an ongoing segment that we have on the channel. We're going to look at the taxonomy of the species group and the different characteristics and attributes that help us name that coral. And look, we've all used the common trade names with Acropora corals, you know, the cherry bombs, the Walt Disneys, the pink Cadillacs. And look, they're fun. They're a bit of fun in the hobby. And they're a necessary evil. Like, at the end of the day, people need to remember the names. They need to be easy to remember, and it makes trading and purchasing really easy. And it brings a bit of interest into the hobby as well. So look, I don't have any problems with the trade names. I'm not here to bag on them, but I guess what I'm looking for with this channel and more generally, just a deeper appreciation of the corals that we look after in our little habitats, in our little ecosystems, in our tanks. And I think part of gaining that appreciation of the corals is actually naming them by their scientific name. Like, there's been well over a century of coral researchers going out and diving onto the reefs around the world, you know, coming up with type locations for specific coral species and using taxonomic guides to describe these things. And so when we choose to quickly and easily use a trade name, we're kind of disrespecting, well, not disrespecting, but not respecting the thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of research that's gone into naming that coral. So look, I've been trying to get my head around Acropora coral names for some time, and it's quite challenging. There's not specific guides out there that are easy to digest. You know, you have to invest a fair bit of time and effort to get your head around it. And so what I'm trying to do with these deep dives, and my intent, is to summarize and distill that information for you and make your job a lot easier to recognize some of these species groups the next time you're in a shop or you're on a holiday diving on a reef somewhere. You'll hopefully be able to recognize some of the key traits we're going to talk about in these deep dives and be able to name at least the species groups, maybe not the species themselves. And we'll have a little identification challenge at the end of this episode, and I'll show you how challenging it can be to get the actual species name, even when it's right there in front of your face. So, but look, my goal is to at least get those species groups named and understood. So today, as I said, we're going to start with the Humilis species group. This is my favorite coral in the whole world. Like, I love this species group, and I've got a piece that I'm going to share with you from my own tank that I lovingly call the Gherkinatus, and that'll become evident when we get to the image later. But to be able to recognize its species group name as the Humilis now, I feel like I have a deeper connection to this coral than what I had before I tried to name it. So a couple of challenges that go along with doing this sort of deep dive. The first is around copyright. So, you know, as a scientist with a PhD in water science, the last thing I want to do is rip off anyone's research or breach any copyright laws that exist out there. So for all of the identification photos that are going to be shown on these deep dives, I've basically done a search for Creative Commons images, usually on Wikimedia or something like that, with full reference to that Creative Commons copyright law for that particular photo. So those images sometimes aren't the best in terms of color. You know, there are better images on the internet that, you know, really pop and show the beauty of the coral, but you know, I don't have the time to individually track down every single photographer and get their blessing to show the photos and images on this YouTube channel. So I've gone with some of the more generic photos, and no disrespect to the photographers, they're incredible photos that I am showing. I just want you to understand that, if you say, well, some of these photos are in direct light, they're not really bright and colourful, well, that's because I'm trying to respect copyright in this process. Obviously, I'm providing this information from an educational purpose only. I think I've got like 48 subscribers at the moment, and anyone who's subscribing to this channel and has gone up to episode 7 here is clearly someone who has a deep appreciation for Acropora corals and wants to really get into the scientific side of, the water chemistry, the taxonomy, the characteristics of these corals and how to look after them. So I'm providing this information from that context. It's an educational purpose, both for me, because I don't know much about these names to start with. So I'm hoping through these deep dives, I actually learned to do this as we go. But yeah, to share with you as well. I guess the other thing is I'm going to be reproducing some facts and observations from a classic journal paper. Well, it's actually a memoir by Wallace et al. 2012, which is basically the holy grail of taxonomy for staghorn and acropora corals across the world. It's an absolute masterpiece, this memoir, and I've extracted some of the key characteristics from it. And every time I've done that, I understand that facts and observations don't actually have copyright associated with them, but out of respect for those authors and the incredible dedication that they've had to the hobby over many, many, many decades, every single time I use an observation from their paper, I've referenced that paper. And that helps you as well understand the provenance of where this information's coming from. So I do this out of both respect for the authors, but respecting that all sources should be noted. And I do note on the front of that memoir, they say that, material within the paper can be reproduced for educational purposes. And so I'm not using any of their photographs or any of their graphs or tables. It's just, characteristics that they note for each coral and using that as a bit of a guide. So anyway, we'll start. It's a lot of blurb there. Apologies for the big upfront description on this one, but I thought I'd introduce the why. Why am I doing these deep dives? And I hope you'll enjoy them. And there'll be a little bit of a poll at the end. So I've got one of the corals from my tank, and I think based on the information that's provided within the presentation I'm about to give, I have a go at getting, well, obviously the species group name, but the species name itself. And if you'd like to participate in the poll, I'd love to see what your vote is as well. So please take the time to do that at the end of the episode. I'll be really interested to see whether I get that right or whether you guys have a different opinion on what the particular coral might be. So let's jump in and let's learn about the Humilis species group of Acropora. Okay, so let's start our deep dive into this Humilis species group. So the Acropora Humilis species group comes from the Animalia kingdom, the Cnidaria phylum, the Anthozoa class, the Scleractinia order, towards getting to the Acroporidae family, otherwise known as Acropora corals. And sitting underneath that family is a bunch of species groups, one of which is the Humilis group. And within that species group, there are 7 main species. So Digitifera, Gemifera, Globiceps, Humilis, Monticulosa, Multiacuta, and Samoensis. So these 7 species will be the ones we focus on in today's presentation. So based on the characterization of all the different Acropora species within the taxonomic guide of Wallace et al. 2012, one of the notable morphology characteristics of all of the Humilis group species is this corimbose coral structure. And I've just got Microsoft Copilot here to draft up a typical sketch of what this corimbose coral structure looks like when it's fully grown in the wild. So it's a bit of a hybrid between a plating coral and a branching coral. It's got this almost bulging disc type overall shape to it, with a very strong axial dominance. So you can see all of these individual axial corallites standing quite proud within this bulging disc profile. Each individual axial corallite within the Humilis species group tends to, not all the time, but tends to have these very thick, short, stubby axial corallites with a axial branch thickness of somewhere between 1 and in excess of 2 centimeters, so really thick corallite branches, and they tend to have this tapering profile on these axial corallites, such that the coral branch is thicker at the base and then gets thinner towards the tip or the stem of the axial corallite. So it's got this very unique shape to it, and I think what draws me, this is my favorite coral species from the Acropora corals, and I think what draws me to this species is its unique morphological characteristics, but these really unique, stubby, tapered axial corallites are just stunning when you see them in real life. And I've got some video footage of a particular species from my own collection later on in the episode. So I thought we'd start describing this corimbose morphology, because it's important to understand that when we sort of go through each individual species. So the first species we're going to look at here is the Acropora digitafera. And thank you to Paul Muir for this amazing photo from Wikimedia Commons. So the digitafera, its type location is in the Marshall Islands. And I'm noting on each of these species whether the coral's present in Australia. And the reason I'm doing this is not because I think Australia's any more special than anywhere else in the world, but we're very unique here in that we can't import corals into Australia. So what we have available from Australia is the limit, or the battery limits, of what we can have in our own individual collections. And so for the Australians amongst us, I've noted in here if a coral is available within Australia, and if it is, whereabouts. So for this particular digitafera, it's present in the Great Barrier Reef and off reefs in Western Australia and Northern Territory. We mentioned that corimbose morphology, which you can kind of see there in that sort of disc-like shape of the coral. And it's got a branch length of 2 to 5 centimeters, so a bit of a shorter, stubbier branch with a 1 to 2 centimeter diameter, classic axial dominance. And this one's got a terete taper. And so what that means, the word terete is referenced within Wallace, Dunn and Muir, 2012. And what that means is, as opposed to the more common tapering profile within this species group, it tends to hold its branch thickness from the base right through to the tip. And so it's got almost like a consistent pipe-like diameter throughout. And it does get some radial crowding where different radial corallites are touching, which you can kind of see in different locations here, the little radial corallites touching. So that's the digitafera, beautiful corallite and kind of unique in this particular species group, probably because of its terete tapering and thinner branch diameter. The next species within our species group is the Gemifera, and thank you to Philippe Bourgeon for this amazing photo from Wikimedia Commons. The Gemifera, its type location is the Great Barrier Reef, and it's available in Australia, not only in the GBR but also in reefs in Western Australia. Classic corimbose morphology, it's got that 2 to 5 centimeter branch length, but a very thick branch diameter. So it exceeds 2 centimeters in that branch diameter, and it's dominant axial corallite morphology. It's got the classic tapering profile, thick at the base to thinner at the tip, and does experience some radial crowding. And you can see there's a fair few little radial corallites in here branching off the axial ones. The next species within this species group is the Globiceps. And this one's really unique. Thank you to MDC Seamark Maldives for the source photo from Wikimedia Commons. The Globiceps type location is in Tahiti, and it's located in Australia within the Great Barrier Reef. The thing that makes this particular species unique with respect to the other corals within this group is it has a branch length that exceeds 5 centimetres. So commonly it has a branch length of 5 to 10 centimetres with a branch diameter of 1 to 2 centimetres. It's axial dominant, but it's got the reverse tapering. So what's really cool about that, and you can see it in the image here, it starts at the base thinner and actually gets fatter and thicker towards the end of the coral. So it kind of looks like a big toe almost here with a thinner kind of base towards the chunky, juicy end of the coral. So very unique, and so if you do see that morphology, it's probably going to end up being the Globiceps species. So 5 to 10 centimetres length, reverse tapering is what to remember with this guy. The fourth species within this species group is the Humilis itself, so the Humilis within the Humilis. Its type location is Fiji, and it's present right across Australia in the GBR and WA and NT. It's got that corimbose morphology, 2 to 5 centimetre branch length. It's got that thicker branch again, so it exceeds 2 centimetres, so it's quite that thick, stubby, tapered branch. And it's axial dominated, but you can see on this image here from the NOAA photo library that there is some predominant radial corallites coming off of the main axial corallite. It's got that classic tapering profile and some radial crowding in here as well. So it's a stunning piece as well, absolutely beautiful. The next species within this group is the Monticulosa, and thank you to Matthias Hiltner from the Travelling Shapey, sourced from Wikimedia Commons. This type location is in Rodriguez, and it's present across Australia on the east and west coast. It's got that corimbose morphology, classic 2 to 5 centimetre length, and you can see in the photo its branch diameter exceeds 2 centimetres. It's got an axial branch dominance and probably the biggest tapering of all of the photos we've seen so far, like super thick at the base towards, a thinner profile at the tip. I note in here there's not much room in this photo for really any radial corallites, but I'm sure that they are there because Wallace et al. Do note that there is some radial crowding with this particular species. Just stunning when you get the colour photo of these things. That is just spectacular. Look at that. All right, the next species within this group is the Multiacuta. I couldn't find a Creative Commons image available on the web, so I worked with Microsoft Copilot to generate this stylized version of the Multiacuta. Its type location is in the Philippines, and it is located in Australia on the east coast in the Great Barrier Reef. It's got that corimbose morphology, classic 2 to 5 centimetre branch length, 1 to 2 centimetres in the branch diameter, so not as thick on the branches. Dominant axial branches and tapering of the corallites themselves with no radial crowding. And finally, we've got the Samoensis. And thank you to Karen Johns from Wikimedia Commons for this image. This unique coral type location is in Samoa, and it's present right across Australia. It's got that corimbose morphology, 2 to 5 centimetre branch length, 1 to 2 centimetres in terms of the branch diameter, so a little bit thinner across the diameter of the branch. But what's unique about this particular species is it's got the terete thickness. So the thickness at the base and the thickness at the tip tend to be consistent. So kind of think of it like a pipe. It doesn't have that tapering. So very unique in this particular species group to have that sort of terete taper and no radial crowding. Absolutely stunning photo, that one. Look at that. Look at the little fishes in there. So happy. Love to have a bit of this in my collection. All right, so this is a piece from within my own collection. I've got a little video here showing it. You can see clearly from this video that the branch thickness on these for the axial corallites is well in excess of 2 centimeters. And the branch length itself is within 2 to 5 centimeters. It's got that really prominent tapering from the base to the tip. And you can see in there quite a fair few little radial corallites as well, branching out off the primary axial corallite with some touching of those radial corallites. So there are some key characteristics from looking at that video that we can use to hopefully land on the species name from the species group. And so I've created a little table here to note some of these different characteristics. And I've used Wallace, Dunn and Muir 2012 as a bit of a guide to trying to name this particular coral. So I've coloured the cells in this table either orange or green. If they're orange, then they've got particular characteristics that are not common to the species within my collection. If the cells are green, then that characteristic is common. So if we start at the Digitophera, because it's got the thinner branch diameter of 1 to 2 centimeters, and it's got no taper, so it's a consistent thickness from base to tip, it kind of gets a red line drawn through it. So I don't think it's a Digitophera. The Gemifera, it ticks all the boxes. So it's corimbose, it's got that 2 to 5 centimeter branch length, it's greater than 2 centimeters in branch diameter, it's axial dominant, it's got the classic tapering profile, and some of the radials touch. So it could be a Gemifera. I've ruled out the Globiceps in that the Globiceps has a 5 to 10 centimeter branch length, it's got the thinner branch diameter and a reverse taper. So it's definitely not a Globiceps. It could be a Humilis or a Monticulosa. Both of those have the thicker branch diameter exceeding 2 centimeters, the stubbier axial corallite at 2 to 5 centimeter length, the tapering profile of the axial corallite, and some of the radials touching. And I've ruled out the Multiacuta and the Samoensis based on the thinner branch diameter and the terete branches of the Samoensis. And also that there's no radial crowding on either of those. So what that basically means is for this particular coral, Acropora coral within my collection, which is my personal favourite coral of all time, it could be a Gemifera, it could be a Humilis, or it could be a Monticulosa. And bringing up my photo again, I feel like just based simply on, and I'd be happy to stop there, like it's one of these 3 species names, and I know it's within the species group of the Humilis. I'm really happy to be able to say, look, it's a Humilis coral. But if I'm gonna have an attempt at a species name, based on the photos I've been able to source on the internet and having a look at the attributes of this particular coral, I feel like the images I saw of the Monticulosa tended to have fewer radial corallites. It's tended, and it had a really predominant tapering profile, which some of the corallites in this do show, but some of the corallites are kind of less prominent, whereas every single axial corallite here is almost like a 10 to 1 tapering versus the Humilis and the Gemifera, which are more like a 3 to 1, 4 to 1 kind of tapering, which is pretty consistent with the image below. I feel like, just as a guess, I probably would land on the Humilis, but I could be convinced that it's a Gemifera as well. So that's going to be my guess. I'm going to set up a poll associated with this channel. I'd love to hear from you guys around which of these three particular species you think it might be. I'd love to get your opinion and just see how far off the mark I am. And just a bit of fun, a lot to go along with the episode. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the Humilis group corals. It was a lot of fun to research this topic, and if this is the sort of content you want to see more of, then please let me know in the comments, and I'll continue to sort of package these up and look at other types of corals that we love within the Acropora family. Anyway, thanks for coming along on the journey on this episode. I'll see you on the next one, and until then, may your reef thrive.